Greetings, friends, and welcome once again to our question and answer session where we're looking at the area of marriage, courtship, relationships, and we are grateful and happy to be here with you once again as we take your questions and answer them from a biblical perspective.
Well, this is Kerry-Ann Chambers, and with me, Pastor Marc Chambers.
Thank you.
So, our first question for today is, Pastor Marc, what are some of the most common marriage breakers? Those things that cause friction, fight in the marriage.
Well, there are several of them that we can talk about. One of the first and most important, and perhaps one of the most downplayed today in the secular society, is to be unequally yoked. Incompatibility of any sort is a disadvantage to any marriage. But when you are incompatible, spiritually incompatible, you're also probably morally incompatible in terms of your values.
Yes.
There's going to be incompatibility there. So this is one of the big areas for marriage breaking.
Yeah. And perhaps, as you say, sometimes it's overlooked by the young couple. They believe that the love and all the good wish that we can put in our relationship is going to cover it. But sooner or later, this is going to come up because our values, our beliefs, they're going to determine how we take decisions, how we do things. It's a problem.
Some young couple even presumptuously think that, well, I'll be able to win him over, or I'll be able to win her over, and he will embrace my values.
And sometimes it's just a matter of time when true colors are shown in the relationship.
And of course, that can be a cause for friction because the other person might resent you trying to force your ideas,
your beliefs,
on him or her.
Yeah.
And that's caused more problem. When children, if children should come in the picture, what values are they going to retain from the home? Are they going to receive your values or your husband's values or your wife's, your partner's values?
Yeah.
And who is to say what they are going to find more palatable? And will you be guaranteed? Are you sure that your partner, your spouse, will support you, support your choice of values as the main center for educating your children?
That is a good point to consider. Now, another area that causes a lot of friction, it can be poor communication skills.
Yes, that's one of the common reasons for friction in a marriage.
Yeah, and fights and discussions and misunderstandings.
Yep. Communication is very important. We do it every day, and there are different levels of communication.
Definitely.
When you take a comparison between how we communicate on the street in a casual manner and how we communicate in our workplace, we can see that there are definitely areas where communication requires greater precision and system.
Right.
In a workplace, in certain workplace, it's very important to have a systematized vocabulary and expressions for precision. But yet, the home itself is an area of one of the greatest challenge, greatest pressure where communication is concerned, because the level of communication communication gets to be more at an emotional level when you're talking about expressing yourself in the home. And sadly, this is one of the areas most neglected. If there are systems, they are tucked away in books that many people never read, and few people do recommend. And people tend to be unaware of these systems and unaware sometimes of very basic very basic knowledge of differences between male and female. Sometimes this affects communication skills And that can help much, just understanding differences between male and female thought processes, psychology, and also understanding the way the differences in expression. Sometimes men tend to be more direct in their way in expressing themselves, while women tend to be more subtle, more symbolic.
That's a good way to put it.
In their expressions, and sometimes this difference can cause frustration
In both parts.
in both parties. So, he might say, "I don't understand. Women are complicated,"
Yes.
and she might be saying, "He doesn't get it."
He doesn't get it. So, what about for a future?
Yes, it's one
episode?
other important
We could
topic, so maybe
actually-
we can go into further details
on this issue.
on
This
this
is a
issue.
very important one, and believe me, if you get to manage some basic considerations in terms of communication skills, your relationship can really improve.
Another area of difficulty is money, money management.
Oh yes,
That's why before marriage it's important to talk about about these issues.
yes,
What are your goals and what are your projections?
and to observe
yeah.
what are the patterns of spending, or how the other person relates, money-wise.
Yes, and establish also norms, establish a budget,
Exactly.
and understand, begin to take measures to make changes in your attitude, your financial attitude, because some people, even after years in marriage, they still are thinking like single people.
Yes, and that can affect.
This is my house. So if you want to have a house, you need to get your house.
Or this is my
Or
money.
this is my money.
Yes.
And everything is me, myself, and I.
Yeah, and that can bring problem.
That's incompatible. That type of attitude is incompatible with what marriage demands.
Also, patterns of how we
Spend.
spend money, or how do we establish priorities in the family. It can really aggravate our relationship
Yes.
with money.
And the area of communication in that aspect as well is very important.
It's very important. What about intimacy? This is a very common one too.
Yes. Sexuality is one area where there tends to be problems. And we find more problems, we find this year to be more problematic as years go by.
Definitely.
Even though the society is more highly sexualized than in the past. But that is not actually helping the situation in marriage.
Yeah.
In fact, many couples come to marriage with inhibitions.
Or misconceptions too.
Misconceptions, being exposed inadequately, having received an inadequate orientation or inappropriate orientation, sexual orientation.
Exactly.
So this is one of the areas also where there's heavy friction. We'll probably touch on this area as well in the future for those who might be interested in how to overcome difficulty and inhibitions in marriage. Of course, we will touch on some areas that might be able to get you off starting on improving in that area.
Yes.
Another area of difficulty is infidelity.
And it's very common nowadays.
Yeah, many marriages end in divorce because of infidelity.
Yes.
So this area, how to avoid falling into infidelity. This has to be addressed early. It's not just when you start, when the person feels that, well, I need to get somebody else. No. No. You want to treasure what you have. Having a right attitude to your spouse, and a healthy respect for his or her needs, healthy sense of value for your spouse is very important.
Very,
It's
very
a very important deterrent toward infidelity.
And also be careful of what kind of patterns are you bringing into the relationship. Because there are many couples who begin having, sexual encounters and even fall into promiscuity before marriage. But then even after marriage, they still have that pattern in their own life. And it's very hard to break. So you need to seek help in this area. What about intolerance, when we have an unforgiving spirit? This is
Well, it
another
might seem like a small thing, but it's one of the biggest reasons
for conflicts.
for conflict and for breaks in marriages.
Yes.
Why is patience, tolerance, understanding, and a forgiving spirit so important in marriage? It's very important because no marriage on this planet is made up of two perfect people. We're talking about the union of people, of persons who are imperfect,
Yes.
who have weaknesses, frailties, faults, things that can cause aggravation and can tire the other person. It's one thing to have to encounter a fault one time out there in the street, but it's another thing to encounter repeatedly something that you find distasteful or something that you find unpleasant and worrying in somebody that you care about. How do you address that? Definitely, the healthy way requires patience, requires tolerance, understanding, and a disposition to help the other person to surmount that. That means being willing to forgive, having the hope that you can make new starts, renovation of the relationship.
It can open the door for restoration. And
Restoration, yeah. Most marriages come to an end not because of the greatness of the crisis, even though many of them have had great crises.
Definitely.
But most marriages come to an end because there is a reluctance to forgive and a reluctance to give another opportunity or new opportunities. Sometimes there's a subtle trap because there's somebody who hates marriage and he works in subtle ways to trap couples. One of the traps of Satan in marriage is to say, I know he is wrong or she is wrong. And if he or she will admit it, I will forgive. I'm prepared to forgive. I'm prepared to forgive, but I'm not going to make that move until that person acknowledges and make that move. Then if he or she's willing to humble herself, then okay, I will forgive. And many couples have ended up in divorce and separation, waiting for the other one, waiting for the so-called guilty party to take responsibility. What is that? Pride. Pride has been the undoing of so many relationships. Pride has been the stronghold of bitterness and intolerance in so many relationships. And relationships with matters, small matters, matters that were not so great, have grown in marriages simply because someone or no one was willing to humble himself and say, let's begin again. Or let's get over this. Let's work it out together.
Exactly. And that's why it is good that when we are having a crisis in any of these areas, it is important to prayerfully seek for help and, to be willing to work together to restore the relationship and to improve.
Yes. Forgiveness is never easy.
Oh, of course.
But forgiveness is much more difficult when we don't realize that we ourselves are living off forgiveness. As long as we think ourselves better than the person or less guilty than the other person, we probably think that, what he did or what she did does not deserve pardon. But if we stop and think, how great is our debt to our Creator and to our Redeemer? How many times He has forgiven us? And how much greater are our debts with Him than perhaps our partners, the offenses that our partner has brought against us? Then maybe we'll be more disposed. The Bible says that, we love Him because He first loved us. And the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts. You know how God sheds His love in our hearts? He pours His love in our hearts, showing us mercy, showing us pardon. That's how the love of God comes into our hearts, as a clear evidence of His willingness to give us a new beginning. So if we have truly experienced that, then we should be willing to show the same, especially to the one that we say we love. Flesh of our flesh, bone of our bones.
Well, so these are, in summary, some of the main causes for frictions and and even breakers for the marriage. So we have to be always on the watch for them. And as I said before, prayerfully seeking help of how to improve in these areas. And I think we can take the time to later on to individually tackle some of these areas.
Yes, some of them that do merit attention.
More attention than these.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to our next question. It's about a young lady. She said, I have been courting for 5 years and my boyfriend is not sure about marriage. What should I do?
Well, that's interesting. I wonder, what is he sure about? Because if they've been together for 5 years, what are his plans? Apparently, she's hoping that the relationship would blossom into something more concrete and blossom into marriage. But he's not sure about marriage. So is he really sure that she is the one for him?
And if he's not sure, so then why still be in that relationship?
Yeah. Sometimes people don't stop to think that, these prolonged relationships that have no aim, that have no real goal. The goal in any courtship should be marriage. Otherwise, it's not really courtship.
Right.
And a healthy courtship period should not be 5 years. A healthy courtship period, which should be 1 year, 1 to 2 years maximum. 2 years. That should be enough time, because after a certain time, then the relationship begins to sour. You get to know, you pass that stage where everything is all flowery, and then you start to see more clearly some of the weaknesses or faults of the person, and less patience. And then there comes up the doubt, should we go forward or should we pull back? And then there's this fear to want to pull back, and then the relationship gets into this rocky stage where there's the momentum to go forward begins to wane or begins to wane, and the doubts are there at the same time. So
and here perhaps is a good moment to mention the difference between dating and courtship, because there are many who enter into a relationship just with the idea of dating. I just want to have a friend and I just want to enjoy myself, but I'm not looking for a commitment, or I'm not seeing the future with this person.
Yeah.
So here I would like to say that courtship, one, it belongs to adults, people who are thinking, yes, I'm looking for something more than fun and having a good time. I'm thinking seriously about whom I'm going to join my life with, probably. So here the focus is different. In some cases, I've seen long periods of courtship because some couples, they start very young, even like high schoolers or very early in the college years, when they are not ready to make the step of commitment. And yet they spend years and years together. And when the time comes for really a commitment, they realize that no, they're not ready for it.
Even though usually when, not all, in all cases, but usually when you have couples entering into friendship very early, normally they're not really entering into courtship. Their courtship is not on their mind. It's just some sort of dating, and what's the motive behind it is to just fit in, to parade or to show, that I can also have a special friend. But that can be a very dangerous thing. I mean, you have your life ahead of you, and that other person has his or her life ahead of her. Right. Why would you make yourself or make the relationship a stumbling block to something more serious in the future? Although, and not only that, sometimes some of these frivolous relationships end up being baggage in future relationships that are to be more serious.
Exactly.
Actually, God, He never intended for relationships to be like that. God wants each marriage to be between two people who have come to know each other, and that's the person that they're knowing for the first time, that first person. Those relationships tend to have a greater advantage than those that, you have had how many different friendships and how many different partnerships, even sexual encounters, and then now you're coming to marriage. But going back to the question, what should you do? Well, I would like to say something to both. Mm-hmm. If you're a young man and you're not sure whether this person is suitable to be your wife, then you shouldn't be holding that person in a state where the person is hoping for something that will not be.
Yes.
Be honest and be considerate. Let that person go. Let that person be free, because maybe you are depriving that person of meeting
the right one,
the husband or the wife of the appropriate person.
Yes.
And if you're a lady and you're in such a situation, then you should really consider whether or not you're actually in a relationship with somebody who is really prepared to be not only your husband, but to be a husband.
Exactly.
Because does he have the level of maturity? This is not a reflection of mature thinking and of somebody who is actually ready to face up to certain responsibilities. Marriage is not a game. It's not sweet and happy feelings. It actually also comes with serious responsibility. So maybe now is the time, if you're in such a situation, maybe now is the time to really do some serious praying and to start having some serious conversations to see where this relationship is really heading. And if it's not heading anywhere toward a lifelong commitment, I would encourage you, and I would encourage my daughter, I would have been encouraging her a long time, not to be in such a long courtship.
Yeah. Personally, as a young lady, I had that idea myself, and I went through college years and everything, and I didn't have a boyfriend, I had many friends. We all enjoy company together. We studied together. It was more like a big gang, so to say. We had fun together. We protected one another. But I was clear that I didn't want anybody to play with me. And something that my parents taught me, do not play with no one's feelings, So that was a good lesson, because it saved me so many heartaches and headaches that I didn't get to know as a young person.
Praise the Lord.
So I always encourage that, if you know that this is the right person, so then it shouldn't take long to go into another step.
If there is trust, if there is admiration, trust, confidence,
Yeah.
then you should be able, and you have the support of your parents, then you should be able to move ahead.
With our blessing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, our next question and final one is also about dating, about meeting people, but this time online. Pastor, what do you think about online dating?
Online dating.
Well, this is very
Well,
common nowadays.
you know, there might be possibility. There might be some couples out there who actually met online. There are always exceptions. But I can envision scenarios where online dating might have some level of complication greater than just meeting face to face and getting to know someone. Where is the person? How far is the person that you're meeting? Where on the planet is that person? Because now you can meet persons from the other side of the world. And how will you be sure that you're actually getting to know this person? Or you're not just getting to know a character?
Yeah, or the best picture of himself or herself.
Yeah, because it could be just another a character invented, that this person is actually painting a picture of himself or herself, not just in the photo there, which also is a problem because some people have projected on the internet photos which are not really themselves, but beyond the external view of the person. How do you know that you're actually getting to know that person? And how does that person know that he or she is not being vulnerable to you presenting a picture of yourself that is not reality? Apart from that, how can you get to actually know that person? And also know the family of that person? Because if you're thinking about something as serious as marriage, that's a very risky area to start. In marriage, you want to be able to communicate and to have a certain level of security as to the person and the family that you will be uniting your life with for life. What are the possibilities that you will be able to get to know, see that person operating in relationship to his family, to his mother, to her.
On a day-to-day basis.
Yeah?
No?
Yeah, or even on a day-to-day basis. See how the person reacts to pressure. See how the person reacts to not only pleasant circumstances, but unpleasant ones.
Yeah.
Get to know, is this person struggling with issues of anger? Or is he or she with some mental problems, mental difficulties, psychological difficulties? How will you know? It's a risky business, at least. Personally, I wouldn't be interested in using that as a means.
Wouldn't you date me online?
Huh? Would I date you online? Perhaps.
No,
Perhaps I wouldn't date you online. You know why? Because personally, I don't feel comfortable with just meeting people. I want to see, normally, I would want to be able to see the person operating in regular life, not just in a romantic setting. I want to see and know the person in real life, and then I observe that person, and then if I feel comfortable, then I am able to make a move.
I agree.
The internet dating doesn't afford me this pleasure and this benefit.
Yeah, I agree with that. As a woman, I would find it difficult for me to establish a relationship like that just with a screen. I need that type of interaction. I need to know more than what it is shown on the screen. In some cases, I must confess, there's maybe some few cases where it can be successful. But here, I want to add another warning into this type of relationships that are coming out. Yeah, you have to be very sure in what environment are you moving in when you are meeting people online. Nowadays, there are very popular apps, even Christian apps, where people post their profiles and, they get supposedly to know each other, or sometimes they meet on a group on social media. But are you sure that the person, how he's portraying himself or herself in the group is the person that you're actually meeting? So there is always that risk factor.
Real dangers out there.
And I have even encountered cases where some young ladies, and not so young, they were having these friendships online, and it happened as in some cases they were with married people and they didn't know, or they had another commitment. So, because again, on the screen or in the profile, we try to show the best of ourselves. So, well, yeah, we understand that there are new things coming on in the world today, and maybe there are others, like this. But we need to understand that with them, there's also risk, and you have to be really sure.
Yes.
Who are you dealing with?
And you need to know exactly really what your goal is. Are you really looking for a serious relationship where you can bind ties with someone for the rest of your life, or is it something frivolous? That's because there are sites for frivolous activity. But if you're really serious, then you really need to consider whether this is the right means.
And in any case,
we would counsel.
Yes. In any case,
to take care.
Yeah. In any case, please pay attention to some red flags. Is the person asking for money or financial help, or money exchange, or if he's asking even for sexual favors? You need to be very careful. Whether you're a man or a lady who listening to this, please, prayerfully. If you want to have a relationship, prayerfully ask the Lord, who is the best place where I can meet this person? Who is the best one for me? And I'm sure that the Lord will show you more than an app.
Yes.
Well,
and in the future, we hope to touch a little bit more on certain norms of courtship,
yes.
Steps to choosing a life partner. We will be touching on that topic in the coming presentations.
Well, we would like to thank you for being with us today. And if you have a question, please write it down in the comment section below. If you have any comment about or question about courtship, about marriage, let us know. And then we will see how we can answer together in our next time together. We give you thanks for being with us and see you next time.
God bless you.